Are you ready to become a wine and food pairing master? To never be caught off guard at a restaurant when selecting wines for dinner again? Well, today we are going to complete your final level to be able to create your own food and wine pairings. Hi there. I'm Jacqueline for Vero, where we go around the world searching out wild and scarce wines that are hard to find, and we bring them to the US for consumers, businesses, and distributors alike. We have been doing a series on food and wine pairings. I'll be linking the other two previous videos at the end of this, so if you want to catch up, there will be there. Previously, we have talked about the terminology you need to understand the concepts behind how food and wine interact and work together. And we have also talked about how best to understand which characteristics in food need to pair with which characteristics in wine and vice versa. Today, we are really going to deep dive into understanding how all of this works. I've got a pen, paper, and some highlighters, and we're gonna go through this together. If you aren't sure exactly what I'm talking about, it probably means you've missed a video or two, so you should definitely subscribe to the channel to make sure that YouTube notifies you when we drop new content. As well, be sure to sign up for our newsletter on verovino.com that I'll have linked below. This will get you emails that will tell you when we release new articles and new videos, and when we have new wines that are ready for you to purchase. All right, so to get you all caught up quickly, last video we talked about complementing and contrasting pairings, and we hinted that there was an easy way to visualize if a pairing will work or not. That is by drawing a tasting map. So I've already drawn out mine here, and you can see all of our key characteristics. The food-based ones I have highlighted in green, and the wine-based ones I have highlighted in pink. Now, note that I have put them in specific locations. The idea is we want characteristics that will interact with each other to be opposite, and this will become apparent later why. Once we have our map, we are going to be tasting our food and our wine. I'll be plotting points to give us an idea and quantify how much of each characteristic there are, and then we'll draw a connect the dot map to show us a geometric shape representing the wine and the food. To properly evaluate a pairing, we are first going to take a sip of our wine, and then once we let our palate sit, we're going to taste our food. And when we do each of those, we're going to be mapping out those points. Then, to end, we're going to taste the wine and the food in quick succession to evaluate how accurate our map was. But we're gonna see how all of this works in real life now. I've got two wines here today to get me started. A white, Trebbiano Abruzzese Parella from Febo, and a red, a Nizza DOCG Barbera from Evaldi. And I've also got some foods, some chicken and cheese, but a few wild cards like sauces and some crackers that are gonna help us to understand how things can change. Because you see, even things like a drizzle of extra virgin olive oil will change a dish. That extra EVU will add oiliness to the dish, and if you are using a really good EVU, like the ones we sell in the Vero shop, it can also exacerbate buttery flavors in the wine as well. All right, so let's start first with our white wine. Okay, so, right away, I see there's no sweetness in the wine. It's dry. It's okay. We don't have to plot out every single term here. Sometimes there isn't any present in the wine or the food. So, it really is nice and full-bodied, so I'm going to give it a medium body. We're gonna put it right here, our dot, in the middle of the body. Finish and intensity is very long on this wine. So as well, I'm gonna move that up kind of higher. There. Acidity, it has a nice acidity, but it's also softer. It's not super present. So we're gonna put medium in the middle. Effervescence, we don't have. It is a still wine, but okay. Like I said, we don't have to plot every point. Sapidity, we actually have quite a bit of a sapidity, even a touch more than the acidity. I'm feeling the salivation come after, so I'm gonna put that just above the acidity a touch. Alcohol, it's quite warm, but in the end it is a white wine. We're gonna go medium on that. And then tannins, because it is a white wine, there are none here. So we're not gonna put anything down. All right, so there's our wine. It's a really long finish, but I think it's out of my mouth, so we're gonna taste our first food, which is going to be our chicken. I have here simple chicken, just salt and in the air fryer, so I didn't even use any oils to cook it. So we're gonna take a nice bite of the chicken, and seeing as it is a chicken breast with not a whole lot of going on there, the oiliness, we don't really have any. So we're gonna start there and we're gonna put that very low. Now, our succulents, I had to chew quite a while, so I have a bit of saliva, but my mouth is also very dry. I'm going to put that low as well. Spices, there aren't any, because obviously I just put some salt on this, so I'm not even going to evaluate that. My persistence and aromatic intensity is very low on this because there really is no flavor. It's just chicken breast. So again, we're gonna go low. Saltiness, bitterness, acidity, sweetness, we have none of that. We're gonna go low there. I don't taste any of that. I put very little salt on it, and so what little I am feeling is hardly there. It's covered up by the sweet tendency of the chicken. Now the chicken, a sweet tendency is an interesting thing to think about. It's not really coming from sugar, but more natural starch is present. Here, I'm gonna give it medium. And fattiness, we have nothing. So very quickly, we are now going to color in our points. So now we have our dots. We're gonna connect them to give ourselves a shape. So there is our wine. And now we see our food. So very quickly, our food is very small in area compared to our wine. Our wine is much bigger. This tells us right away that when we go through that pairing, the wine is probably going to overpower the food. We're going to taste very little of the food compared to the wine. As well here, we don't really see these points matching up in terms of symmetry like we want. There's a little bit of the symmetry where we have a large base and a large base, but overall, this is probably not going to work as a pairing because that wine is going to overpower it. So let's go through and see how we did. So first, I'm going to take a little bite of food again. And while I still even have a little food in my mouth, I'm going to taste my wine. In fact, we were correct. I have no more chicken. I do not taste that chicken whatsoever. It's like I didn't even eat anything. So we see that the chicken was greatly overpowered by the wine. What can we do about this? Well, we can start to add some other things that we're missing, like for example, our persistence and our spices and our fattiness and oiliness. Those were things that were lacking. So how can we add those in? I've got two sauces here. I've got some mayonnaise and I've got some hot sauce. We are going to maybe mix these together a little bit and to create our own little sauce. So let's try this again. We've got our chicken. We're gonna dip it in our sauce. And let's think about the flavors and the sensations we're feeling. So right away, that mayonnaise really helped with the succulence and the fattiness. So we are going to amp those up to medium now. Our sweet tendency is about the same. I'm gonna leave that there. Here, saltiness, acidity, bitterness is more or less the same. A little bit of saltiness came in from the hot sauce, so I'm gonna add a little bit there. But the big thing that changed here was that persistence and the spices and the aromatic intensity. The mayonnaise with the more salty flavors, and then the egg flavors, and then the hot sauce with the spice, and also the length of the spice. This is a pretty spicy sauce. Really moved that up. We're gonna be pumping that all the way up here. So our oiliness, we're going to leave a little bit more thanks to the mayonnaise. Okay, let's now draw our new shape. I'm going to be using this lesser green color to represent this. And okay, so right away we see that we have vastly changed the area of this chicken. We see it's much bigger, it's almost in size with the wine. And we've also kind of changed our points here, where it's a little bit more balanced, at least more than it was. So while this may not be a perfect pairing, and in all honesty, perfect pairings really are difficult to find, if inexistent, we're gonna do this again together and see how this new pairing works out. Big difference. No, not a perfect pairing, but the chicken did not disappear as quickly as it did. In fact, that spice actually balanced quite well with the wine, where I'm still feeling a touch of the spice on my back palate that's mixing with the intensity and finish of the wine still. It works. So we can see that we can also adjust our pairings by adding in a little bit of extra spices. Maybe instead of using hot sauce, I could have spiced the chicken in the beginning, knowing that chicken is a very bland food. All right, so let's move on to do our red wine and cheeses. I've got my Nizza Barbera here, so let's taste it and plot our points. So again, sweetness, no, nothing here, but body is incredible. It's very full-bodied. This is a Barbera that is aged for over a year in wood, so it's got quite a bit of body to it. As well, intensity and finish, even talking and breathing and, licking my lips, I'm still tasting that finish. So again, we're gonna put our intensity and finish very high here. Acidity, it's got a decent acidity as a Barbera should, but the age has dampened it a little bit, so we're gonna give it kind of medium high, let's say. And effervescence, obviously there isn't any, it's still. Sapidity, I'm gonna put it on par with the acidity. Alcohol, I am feeling quite a bit of alcohol, I would say towards the higher end. Not quite to like a liqueur or, gin situation, but it is higher. And tannins are present here, but they are very well amalgamated, so I'm gonna put kind of medium. All right, so let's draw out our points really quick. Wow, we have another really big wine here. All right, so we're gonna taste our first cheese, which is going to be a Parmigiano Reggiano. So I've got my cheese. First thing we notice here is the saltiness. Or at least I notice the saltiness first. It is quite salty. So we're gonna give that fairly high over here. As well, quite succulent, because I do have to chew that for a while. So despite being dry, it promotes succulence. Persistent spices and aromatic intensity. Obviously no spices, but it is very intense aromatically. Parmesan in and of itself has a lot of inherent flavor to it that is identifiable. And as well, it is lasting quite long on my palate. I'm still tasting it now. So we're gonna put that quite high. Oiliness, I'm not really getting much. I am getting a little bit of fattiness, kind of a creamy sensation. So we're gonna put low oiliness here. In fact, that's probably not even gonna factor in. Sweet tendency, it's not very sweet. And we're gonna give it kind of a medium fattiness. So let's go through and map out our Parmigiano. When you're drawing your maps, you want them to be fairly, you don't necessarily want them to have dips. So for example, where my oiliness here falls inside the outer limits, I don't need to count that. I'm going to discount it because it doesn't factor into my overall area. So looking at this right away, we see relatively similar shapes and similar areas. We might hit this one pretty close to home on our first go. So let's go through and let's evaluate this and see how it goes. Very well matched. Interesting. Well matched. I am not really feeling too much of one or the other. If I have to say, I think maybe the wine one. I'm tasting a little bit more wine than food. But overall, very well matched. And they work well together. I'm quite pleased with that pairing. So Parmesan and Nizza works. Let's try, however, something completely different. We're going to now taste a piece of, I have here, Fontina cheese. Very basic, and we're going to see how a Fontina cheese stacks up. This is a much creamier cheese. It's a much younger cheese. So right away, fattiness is off the charts. I'm still... Sweet tendency, I'm going to list about the same. Succulence, a little less. and actually. Oiliness, I'll leave the same. However, here, our persistence and our aromatic intensity is much less because it's a less aged cheese. It comes from cow's milk as well. So we just don't have the intensity that the aged Parmesan is going to give us. So I'm gonna have to deduct points there. As well, it's not as salty or, it doesn't have that saltiness that the Parmesan has. So as well, we're going to deduct points there. So let's draw our new one. We'll use this color here. Whoops. And okay. So right off the bat, we see a much smaller area than the wine, a much smaller area than the Parmesan. So and we also see a big spike here on the fattiness with not really the same level of spike on the acidity that are across from each other. So this is kind of telling me we might not have as good a pairing as the Parmesan was. But let's find out. The cheese is completely gone. It's as if I didn't even eat it. Nothing there, all I'm tasting is the wine. So this tells us that the wine was very overpowered compared to the cheese. This is not a perfect pairing. Wow, this is all so interesting. So mapping out something like this, giving yourself those points will help you visualize what will work and what won't, give you an idea beforehand. And how cool is all of this? To get to see it geometrically laid out. Eventually, you will be able to visualize this chart in your head. And you can imagine positioning a spike here, and maybe that means we'll need a spike down here, that kind of thing. And this allows you to help to envision and craft pairings theoretically like a pro. Now, like tasting wine, practice takes perfect. As well, also to each his own. The best way to expand your pairing comfort zone and to experience is to just play with it. You want to taste lots of wine, taste lots of foods, and when you do that, think of the flavors and the quantities of those flavors. You want to also taste them together and think about what is going on in your mouth. Am I getting more of one flavor than another? But even bad pairings will help you learn, like our Fontina and Nizza. There is no wrong answer. Everything is learning. So thank you for joining me today. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like below. And don't forget to subscribe here on YouTube and to the Vero newsletter on verovino.com to stay in the loop on all new content, events, and new wines. Here are the promised previous videos on wine and food pairing, and I will see you over in those videos. Bye.